Hello everybody and welcome to a new episode of Pokemon Ruby Nuzlocke. In the last episode, I paid my respects to Mount Pier, made a cross-region trip around Hoenn, and progressed the plot by defeating waves and waves of Magma members. In this episode, I'm finally heading for the next town and covering a lot of ground. Well, more like covering a lot of the sea, to be honest. After Maxie's hasty retreat, the wall of Waymers have vanished, and now the last segment of Hoenn has opened up, which is water routes. Unlike my previous trips through routes, the sea routes in this game are fairly open and very quick to navigate. In Route 124, it is open so much that it's actually the largest route in any Pokemon game. Oddly enough, it's not really much to do here, even for capturing Pokemon. Options are very limited, so if anybody wants to do a run, would be wary that once you leave the mainland, you won't get many chances to catch new encounters. The only thing here is a house that trades a number of collectible shards in exchange for evolutionary stones. However, finding the shards requires diving for treasure and is quite time consuming. What isn't time consuming is getting to the next town, as I've already reached Mossdeep City. See how water routes are way more easier in the land? Either way, now that I am here, it's time for the next gym and prepare for combat. Here in Mossdeep Gym, you'll be facing Psychic Pokemon of levels 35 to 42, which is a huge jump in levels. I must admit, I came into this gym a little unprepared and used some items to keep up in terms of levels. The gimmick of this gym is conveyor belts, which are used to force to meet trainers and to go around in circles. To get anywhere around here, the gym has several switches that change the direction of specific panels that will eventually take you to the gym leaders. In the Emerald version, the entire layout and gimmick of the gym is actually quite different. Instead, you have to deal with a combination of conveyor belts and warp panels that take you to random places on the map. The Pokemon you face between the versions is for the most part the same. The other major change is the gym battle that has twice as many Pokemon in the Emerald version than in Ruby and Sapphire, which is a sort of a trade-off for nerfing Petalburg Gym. If you want to have an easier time here, I recommend using Pokemon that are especially defensive or use Dark types, which are immune to most moves here. Just be careful when opponents use Future Sight, which is a weird, non-stab delay attack that can hit Dark types in this generation only. I would also recommend using attack-oriented Pokemon, as Psychics are in general have poor defenses. If you have trouble, I'd highly recommend using the Shadow Ball TM, which you can pick up at Mount Pier. In terms of difficulty, I would say this one's one of the harder ones, just because Psychics are usually glass cannons that can hit hard, but can't take much hits. Okay, now that I covered a bit of the gym, during this speed up, I wanted to briefly talk about Mossdeep City. In Mossdeep, the main points of interest are Steven's private cottage and the Space Center. The Space Center is where they test rocket launches in order to make successful space missions that are classified. The place is analogous to Tanegashima Space Center, which is south of Hoenn's real-world mainland counterpart Kyushu, that tests satellite launches and rocket technology that was retired in 1992. In the Emerald version, an extra chapter happens where you team up with Steven to take out Magma Grunts, looking for rocket fuel to erupt Mount Chimney. Funny thing though, for Nuzlocke runners, when you team up with Steven, only half of your team is usable, and if you lose them, it's an automatic game over. Not sure if it happens if Steven's Pokemon lose, but it is a really messed up way to lose a challenge. In terms of Pokemon Adventure Special, not much really happened, only that Team Magma's femme fatale Marge infiltrated and stole data from the site. Apparently the Space Center is like a military base where all sorts of secrets are kept there, especially considering how big of a role it plays in the Fire Red and Leaf Green chapters. You would think a facility with such secrets would be well guarded against a single trainer. While Marge was infiltrating national security, the rest of Hoenn was in disarray. Both evil teams managed to access the sleeping Pokemon, which caused natural disasters to stir up, forcing all the gym leaders to spread out and lead citizens into shelter, which ended up being New Volville, just because it's underground. Around this time, Sapphire was doing her part in Fort Tree, working with Winona, assisting her duties with managing the operation while looking for the last gym leader, Wallace. Both were pretty much just using all their strength combating the extreme weather. The most they ended up just accomplishing was saving a unique looking Pokemon. Ruby, on the other hand, was acting selfish, winning more contest badges during a flood of all things, while Wallace was there just trying to knock some sense into Ruby. In the end, after getting scolded by Wallace and doing some soul searching, Ruby made the decision to go and help fight Magma. I do admit how the manga handled that segment felt very real, not only for their attention to detail on the natural disasters, but making major characters deal with their flaws to become stronger characters. Not to mention how they attempt to highlight some of the minor things in Hoenn, like characters and locales. Now that I'm done covering Mossdeep and among other things, it's time for the gym. What we have here is a double gym battle with Tate and Liza. They each only have one Pokemon and can be really hard depending on the AI. The duo uses a combination that look like fire and ice types, but instead are of a unique typing of rock and psychic that has a large move pool that can include fire, ice, grass, rock, and psychic. For this fight, I decided to use ESPig as a support using Light Screen, seeing how both of my opponent's Pokemon use special moves. Since they are rock types, Surf makes fast work of these two. If you want to plan out this battle better, keep in mind that Solrock is physically defensive and Lunatone especially defensive. Also, both are pretty slow, especially considering my Spoink being 10 levels below theirs. The strategy that I thought they would do at the start would be using Light Screen and Sunny Day, two weakened water moves, and give Solrock freedom to just spam Flamethrower and Solar Beam, while Lunatone on the other hand would stall out with Hypnosis, putting opponents to sleep, so it can set up with stat builds using Calm Mind, which increases special attack and special defense. In this turn, however, both were just being random. I was concerned that this was going to be hard, but right here this was a lost opportunity to set up. Most of my concern was just Solrock, hence why I went to trouble to confuse it. In the end though, Solrock just went down before causing any real trouble. Funny how after my opponents lost their biggest threat, and only now did they start using smarter moves. It would have been wiser to put Fenric to sleep, seeing how only he and Phosphor are the only ones that can match them in levels. Well, despite being really weak, ESPig did her job, and so I decided to switch out. Even though at this point this match was pretty much over, Liza decided to heal Lunatone. In my opinion, this was really annoying considering the duo can spam potions since they each carry 2 hyper potions, meaning they can heal up to 4 times. Also, like an idiot, I got overconfident and forgot that both Pokemon have Levitate, meaning they're immune to ground. Just to make sure that Lunatone didn't continue stat buffing and healing via potions, I decided to paralyze it so to cripple it further and possibly get some free turns. In terms of difficulty, this gym is easy for me, but it is probably really hard if you come unprepared. I am curious how well the remakes handle it. This game does a good job creating strategies at each gym, so I hope they continue with this tradition. But after a drawn out battle, I defeated Tate and Liza. Now that I'm done with this gym, time to take care of one last minor detail before healing and heading out to our next destination. Despite being a rich guy, Steven sure is generous. Okay, with the HM move, it's time to heal and rearrange my team since the next section is going to be quite a trip. Everything is done here, so it's time to head out. At this point, the game doesn't really hint as to where to go, so the next thing that has to be done is to head south and partake in a new mechanic started in this generation and a personal favorite of mine, which is Dive. Dive is a unique mechanic only used here and part of Black and White games, where you go underwater through the dark water tiles. The interesting thing about traveling underwater is you can potentially find new Pokemon, and the paths are tunnels to far off areas that don't really connect in any other way. If more thought was emphasized in this mechanic, you could potentially double the area to explore in a region. I really hope the remakes at least add something to it, or perhaps at least add a new area or two. Even Pokemon Adventures put emphasis on it by making it a plot device. What had happened was Zafar and Winona ended up saving an old couple who were Tate and Liza's masters. They informed Winona that the evil teens were in an underwater cave called the Cave of Origins, which cannot be accessed by normal means. Afterwards, Ruby showed up in style to explain that the Pokemon Zephyr had rescued was able to use Dive. Which is pretty funny considering in this gen, no Pokemon can naturally learn that move. After Ruby and Sapphire finished their usual routine of the Lover's Quarrel, both used Relicanth's power to dive and head for what seemed to be the final battle with Team Magma and Aqua. Here in the C4 cavern, you will be in a maze-like cave that is filled with magma grunts. In order to advance here, you're going to need Strength, Rock Smash, Surf, and Dive to complete this area, which is a tall order of HM moves. If you follow it closely as to what I do here, it is actually pretty fast to navigate and will only require 2 required battles. I must admit, I went into this area semi-blind as I did not look up any maps or guides to traverse this area. All I used was my wits and vague memories of playing the game years ago. It feels pretty great that I can somewhat still remember this game. In terms of plot, this is the last-ditch effort to stop the legendary Pokemon's awakening. For Pokemon Adventures, quite a few things happen here. Not exactly here, but the Cave of Origins, which, by considering the list of events, this area pretty much fits it. After Team Magma and Aqua made a pact, the two teams went off to awaken the legendary Pokemon, one of land and one of the sea. Team Aqua thought they had won their battle, thinking that killing Mount Chimney and expanding the sea a bit would weaken the land Pokemon and give the sea Pokemon an edge at battle. In reality though, Team Magma had won the battle right from the get-go by obtaining the blue and red R's, which are like an ancient version of the Pokeball that the holder can use to control them. Team Aqua eventually realized something was up and ended up sending an SS Trio member, Amber, to investigate. Back with Team Magma, Maxie was using the orbs to control both Pokemon, but controlling both proved too much of a strain on him, and he entrusted the blue orb to Tabitha. It seemed both orbs reacted violently the closer they get together. Tabitha went off to use the blue orb, only to end up in a heated battle with Amber. The two fought until Amber retrieved the orb to Archie, and in a jerkish move, Archie trapped both of them in a submarine to sink and die. The two were sinking slowly to their deaths, only until after, by quick thinking of Tabitha and the help of his partner Blaze, Amber and Tabitha managed to survive. Kinda makes you think where Team Aqua's loyalties lie. Team Magmas are a small group that its members don't really care for one another, but when push comes to shove, they still look out for one another. At this point, Ruby and Zephyr had made it to the sea and fought waves and waves of enemies, until they finally encountered Archie and Maxie. Ruby and Zephyr had a double battle with them and managed to defeat them using their teamwork. The two attempted to remove the orbs, and instead it was absorbed by Archie and Maxie. And while under the influence of the orbs, Archie and Maxie dragged Ruby and Zephyr outside and were pulling off some Street Fighter Hadoukens on them. The rage that both Maxie and Archie were putting into the orbs caused the legendary Pokemon to erupt and restart the conflict that started years ago. Gym leaders were doing their best to hold off the legendary Pokemon, but were having difficulty just because Magma and Aqua Grunts were holding them back. Back with Maxie and Archie though, Ruby and Zephyr pulled a Deus Ex Machina by conveniently obtaining a piece of the meteorite from Mount Chimney that Zephyr apparently swiped from Archie. They used its power to absorb their energies of the orbs and extract them from Archie and Maxie. In the end though, without anyone using the orbs, a large explosion erupted from the two legendary Pokemon fighting and sent Ruby and Zephyr flying off into the abyss. Okay, now that I'm done going leaps and bounds into the plot, it's time to prepare for combat. Right here we have our final battle with Marge. She has 2 Pokemon and it's pretty easy for the most part. For reference, Marge is Magma's femme fatale who attacked the Space Center for secrets which will come to play later on. Let's just say it has to do with Ruby, which adds more creep points to the gal that harasses a kid. She starts off with Camera Up, and right here she tries to take advantage of the switch-in I did and use Amnesia to defend against water moves. If only they gave Magma members better fire types to use. The battle would be worth more of my time. Too bad a 4 times weakness to water just is not enough to survive the hit. Her second Pokemon is Mightyena. This one is pretty much the same as last time and pretty easy to deal with. It'll Intimidate to reduce attack and attempt to use the Scary Face and Swagger tactic to get the advantage. I pretty much was stalling a bit just to see if she tried anything different. In the end though, I used the same move to finish it the same way. In terms of difficulty, Marge is very easy at this late in the game. Personally, I'm not a fan of how easy this was, much less of some of the decisions the remakes handles the character models of Team Magma in general. Team Magma's portrayal used to look like more of a group of the occult, and now has resulted into some sort of bad mix of Callus's Team Flare with a hint of Team Magma's original models. Marge's new model looks less threatening, and a bit of a letdown. It's still not as insulting as Tabitha's weight gain, and don't even get me started with Maxie. I can honestly go on a rant as to how many of the new character models in the remakes look so bad in comparison to the original. Unfortunately, now is not the time or place to go into detail as I'm already finished up this fight. Alright, now that I'm done with Marge, all there's left to do is to pass one more strength puzzle and confront Maxie one last time. The puzzle here is pretty simple. The general idea is to move the off-sided boulders and move the center one last. Past this point, there are no more fights except Maxie himself hiding in the innermost depths of a secret underwater base, like a run-of-the-mill evil genius. If I were him, I would just go full force with the Lex Luthor motif and add a dormant volcano lair or a space station controlling a giant laser. Now that would be an interesting concept for a Pokemon game if it were to take place in space. I will suggest Nuzlocke runners heal up, as Maxie is not as simple. As you enter the inner depths of this place, it becomes more steamy, which if you are desperate right here, the TM for Earthquake is right around here, which is the strongest ground move in the game and very useful against Maxie himself. I won't need it as I am pretty well prepared as it is. Well, all there is left to do is to move forward and prepare for the last Magma fight. Hey look, a volcano lair! Way to go to stay in character, Maxie. Right here for the final time, me being Maxie's Superman to his Lex Luthor, we have a Pokemon fight. He has 3 Pokemon and is a pretty powerful opponent. He starts off with Mightyena that starts with the Intimidate and will run the same strategy as Marge, which is to make you slower and to follow up with the Swagger. Oddly enough, it knows Roar, though I would assume it's for Ghost Pokemon, seeing how Mightyena has only one normal offensive move. Very odd considering this would be a good opportunity to set up. I decided to just paralyze him just because fighting most opponents makes it easier. It cuts your speed in half and occasionally makes you not make a move at all, as you saw here. Maxie decided to heal with a super potion, which you would think the loony entrepreneur could afford better potions. Perhaps if he wasn't thinking long-term plans, he would be aware of the issues right in front of him. Either way, it ended up backfiring as I got a critical hit here. Maxie's strongest Pokemon is Camera. As much as I've mocked this Pokemon in terms of typing, this one is no joke. It knows Earthquake, which for the most part gives it stabs just because it's ground type and will do a ton of damage. Also be aware that using flying types to avoid Earthquake is not an option, as he also carries Rock Slide to counter them. Camera also knows Amnesia to compensate his poor defense against water. Oddly enough though, despite Maxie's reputation for being a fire user, his only fire Pokemon has no fire moves. A grass type would actually hold well against it. I still recommend a solid water user to make quick work of this one. A surf should one-shot it if you're at a decent enough level. Maxie's final Pokemon is Crobat. It is a very fast Pokemon with decent stats. Pretty funny that he used a Pokemon that I personally detest as his final line of defense. Though that's just a personal qualm I've had playing in Johto. Maxie's Crobat is a bit of an oddity as it makes me think that it's his pet that he carries around everywhere to keep him company. It is poison and flying and yet knows no poison moves. Also, it's one of those Pokemon that evolves based on love, which apparently he gave tons to it. At least it's not an iguana, or even worse, a pet cat. When fighting it, just be careful not to use Psychics since it knows Bite, and it also knows Confuse Ray to drag this fight even further. I would recommend using Electric to paralyze it to cut its speed and attack it, or even better, a Rock type since it would not be able to do much to it against it. This fight was pretty much in the bag, and as one last middle finger, Maxie healed up one last time. Good thing I've been getting lucky with the critical hits. And with that, I broke a rich man's dream. Okay, first of all, the music is very creepy here. Second, how the heck did Steven know Ruby was? I swear, Hoenn is full of stalkers. It looks like Maxie messed up and used the wrong orb on the red giant called Groudon. He was interesting to be the suave, insane billionaire who messed up Hoenn in a plot to make more real estate. Too bad a meddling kid got in his way. All he did was mess up the region and leave a kid to clean it up. Maxie is better off going into politics or something. You would think Archie's semen would be enough to contain Maxie's ambitions. Steven for that matter too. All those resources and nothing to show for it. Ugh. After quite a bit of plot progression, Steven has hinted to go to the next town. As usual, it was really vague, but all you had to do is traverse a bit and use dive to enter the next town, which I do love how the game tries to go in designing the towns. Very different than what you're used to seeing in Pokemon. I covered a lot, and it's only a short trip away to Topless City, so I think I'll end it here. Next time on Pokemon Ruby Nuzlocke, I'm going to finish up the Team Magma scenario and most of the game. Until then, see you later. Bye!